You had 22 browser tabs open. None of them were for work. It was 2 a.m. You had a deadline at 9. You'd been sitting at that desk since 6 in the evening, 8 hours. And the document in front of you had exactly one sentence in it. One sentence. The same sentence you'd written and deleted 4 times. This wasn't a bad night. This was every night. That's where this story starts. Not with the business, not with the breakthrough, with the desk, the tabs, the one sentence, and the specific kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing too much, but from trying to start and failing over and over until the trying itself becomes the thing you're afraid of. You were 19 years old and you had no idea what was wrong with you. Stage 1. The static. Here's what ADHD actually feels like from the inside. Not the version people joke about, not, oh, I'm so ADHD, I keep forgetting my keys. The real version. It feels like every task in existence has the same weight. Answering an email and rebuilding your entire life. Same urgency, same resistance, same paralysis. Your brain doesn't have a volume knob, everything is loud. Or nothing is, there's no in between. You'd make lists. Long ones, color coded. You'd spend 40 minutes organizing the list and 0 minutes working on what was in it. You'd set timers, you'd move your phone to another room. You'd try the Pomodoro method, the time blocking method, the just start for 5 minutes method. You'd read the productivity books, you'd watch the YouTube videos. You'd tell yourself tomorrow would be different. Tomorrow was the same. And underneath all of it, the failed systems, the missed deadlines, the half finished projects, there was a story you were quietly telling yourself that you were lazy, that you were smart enough to know what to do and too weak to actually do it, that other people had something you didn't, some internal engine that ran clean and steady, and yours was broken. You were 19 when the diagnosis came, a DHD, inattentive type, and your first reaction wasn't relief, it was something stranger than that, it was grief. Because you looked back at 10 years of school, 10 years of trying and quitting and hating yourself for it, and you realized that whole time you'd been fighting with the wrong map. The doctor gave you a prescription, you filled it. And here's the thing about the medication, the thing nobody tells you upfront. It didn't fix it. It made the real problem visible because the medication quieted the static just enough for you to see clearly. And what you saw was this. You didn't just have ADHD. You had no system, no structure built for how your brain actually worked. You'd been using systems designed for neurotypical minds and wondering why they kept failing. That wasn't weakness. That was physics. You were trying to run software on the wrong operating system. That realization was the beginning. Not the solution, just the beginning. Stage 2, the system wars. The first 6 months after diagnosis were not a glow up. Let's be clear about that. You tried to build a system, then you tried a different one, then you burned both of them down and built a third. You were 19, newly diagnosed, newly medicated, and genuinely convinced that if you just found the right app, the right notebook, the right morning routine, everything would click. It didn't click. What happened instead was slower and less satisfying. You started noticing patterns, not solutions yet, just patterns. You noticed that you worked better in the morning than at night. That background noise helped, but music with lyrics destroyed your focus. That deadlines you created yourself meant nothing, but deadlines with consequences, someone waiting, something real on the line, those you could meet. You noticed something else too, that the physical environment was not neutral. Your bedroom was a graveyard for focus. Too many associations, sleep, distraction, comfort, avoidance. The moment you sat at that desk, your brain remembered every other time you'd sat there and failed to work. It was almost Pavlovian. The desk didn't say work, it said struggle, so you left. Coffee shop in the morning, library in the afternoon, anywhere that wasn't the bedroom, it felt almost too simple to matter. It mattered enormously. You started writing these observations down, not in a productivity app, just a plain notebook. A running log of what worked, what didn't, and the specific conditions under which your brain would cooperate. No framework borrowed from a book, no system designed by someone whose brain ran differently. Just data, your data, collected the hard way, one failed morning at a time, and slowly, not dramatically, not in a montage, a system emerged. Yours, built from the inside out. Morning block always. One task on a sticky note, not a list, just one. Environment with no exits. Phone in a different room, not just face down. A short walk before sitting down because movement helped the brain shift into gear in a way that caffeine alone never did. The first real signal came about 8 months in. It was a small project. Freelance work, nothing impressive. A client needed some marketing copy. You'd taken the job because you needed money, not because you felt ready. You set up your conditions, everything in place, and you worked. For 3 hours, you actually worked. Not perfectly. You lost focus twice, pulled yourself back both times. You delivered on time. That sounds small, It wasn't, because it was the first time in your life you had proof, not hope, proof. Evidence that the system worked, that you could do what other people did, not in spite of your brain. By understanding it, that proof changed something. Not your circumstances, just your belief in what was possible. And sometimes that's the only thing that needs to change. Stage 3, the identity shift. Here's what nobody talks about when they talk about building better habits. At some point, the habit stops being something you do. It becomes something you are. That shift doesn't happen because of willpower. It doesn't happen because you found the perfect system. It happens because you accumulate enough small wins that the story you tell about yourself starts to change. You stop being the person who can't finish things. You start being the person who finishes things. Sometimes, then usually, then almost always. That happened around 21. You'd been running your system for almost 2 years. It had evolved, gotten leaner. You'd cut out the pieces that were theater, the color-coded calendars, the elaborate morning rituals that took longer to set up than to execute. What remained was almost embarrassingly simple. A short list, a time block, an environment with no exits, a rule that said the first task of the day was always the one you least wanted to do. You weren't the same person who sat at that desk at 2 a.m. with 22 tabs open. Same brain, different relationship with it. And that distinction matters. Because there's a version of this story where mastering ADHD means curing it, becoming someone whose mind runs smooth and clean, no friction, no chaos. That's not what happened. The hyperfocus was still there, the impulsivity was still there, the rejection sensitivity, the way criticism landed harder than it should, stayed longer than it should, still there. But now you knew the terrain. You stopped fighting your brain and started working with the grain of it. Deep work scheduled during high focus windows. Hyper focus used as fuel instead of wasted on YouTube spirals. Accountability built into the system, so impulsivity had a structure to push against instead of running loose. You weren't fixed, you were calibrated. And a calibrated ADHD brain is not a liability. It is, in the right conditions, one of the most powerful things in a room. Stage 4, the build. The business didn't start with a plan, it started with a client, then another, then a referral from someone you delivered for, then a moment when you looked at your bank statement and realized you'd made more this month from your own work than you'd ever made from a job. You were 22. The early days were not clean. You underpriced everything because you didn't yet believe you were worth more. You took on clients who weren't right because you were afraid to say no. You worked long hours not because the system was broken, but because you hadn't yet learned to apply it to a business the same way you'd applied it to your own focus. There was a week, about 3 months in, where 2 projects overlapped, a client went quiet mid-revision, and you didn't sleep properly for 5 days. You sat at the desk and felt the old static creeping back in. The tabs, the paralysis, the familiar pull toward avoidance. But this time it was different, because this time you recognized it. You knew what that feeling was. You knew what caused it. And you knew from 3 years of evidence exactly what to do with it. One task, one block. Same rules as always. The business was new. The brain was the same brain you'd already learned to work with. You got through the week. You delivered both projects. That was the moment you knew this was real. By 23, you had a small team, 2 people, a developer and a project manager. You were terrified, not of the work you knew, terrified of the responsibility, of being the one other people's income depended on. But here's what surprised you. The same skill that had saved you, building a system that worked for how your brain operated, turned out to be exactly what a business needed. Because a business is a system. Inputs, outputs, bottlenecks, feedback loops. And you had spent 3 years learning to map those things inside your own mind. You were better at it than most. By 25, the business was real. Not viral, not a $1 million exit story. Real, profitable, a small team that trusted you, clients who kept coming back, work that meant something, built inside the same constraints that once made you feel broken. The constraints hadn't disappeared. They'd shaped what you built. Like how pressure shapes stone, not destroying it, just determining its form. The truth. Here's what this actually cost. 3 years of failed systems before one worked. Relationships strained by a brain still learning to regulate itself. Mornings that started with intention and ended with self-blame over and over until slowly, very slowly, the ratio flipped. It was not a straight line. It was a long, grinding education in a subject nobody had told you was yours to study. And here's what it gave. A business, yes. But more than that, a relationship with your own mind that most people never build. Because most people don't have to. Their brain cooperates enough that they never need to learn its language. They coast on defaults that happen to work. You didn't have that option. So you learned the hard way, the only way that actually sticks. And what you built in the process was not just a company, it was a version of yourself that could be trusted, that showed up, that finished things. That version of you, 19, sitting at the desk with 22 tabs open and one sentence on the page, needed to hear one thing. Not that it would be easy, not that the ADHD would disappear, not that you'd wake up one morning and be a different person. Just this: you're not broken, you're running on different defaults. And defaults can be changed. The proof is sitting right here, 6 years later. Now it's your turn. But remember, calibration doesn't happen without the right tools. If you're ready to start building that system we talked about, you need to understand the mechanics of self-discipline. I broke down exactly how to move from zero habits to unstoppable in this video right here. I'll see you over there.